Caregivers, have you ever felt like nothing is going right? Well, cheer up and welcome to Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver radio program, where you'll learn how to avoid that dreaded thing called caregiver burnout and how to survive the grieving process. Join Dave and his guests now as they share practice tips and tools that you can start using immediately to help get you through this day. Now, here's your caregiver host, Dave Nassaney.
From Los Angeles and the Big Apple in Manhattan, this is Caregiver Dave, and you're on the Caregiver Dave Show. And let's see now. My lovely co-host Adrienne Gruberg is with us today. Always nice when that happens, which is most of the time. Say hello, Adrienne.
Hello.
And we're coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on 16 global and audio video platforms. And there are just so many. Should I name them? Should I not name them? I'm going to name them. What the heck? We got iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, Mixcloud, Listen Notes. I just can't do it in one breath. Blueberry, Player FM, Podcast.com, VIP Internet Radio, Facebook Live, HealthyLife.net, and CaregiverDave.com. And we are so proud to be voted number one caregiver podcast of the top 50. That's right, I said 50, 50 podcasts for caregivers on Player FM, and one of the top 6 best podcasts on caring.com. And we have an exciting show planned for you today, don't we, Adrienne?
Yes, we do.
Right on cue. Joe Murphy, author of Living Full Tilt, Celebrate Life, the new number one international best-selling book guiding the reader in understanding what we actually accomplish by learning to unconditionally accept and love ourselves. That's an important message. But before we get started, I want to take this moment to thank last week's guest, author of the book Softening Grief, Joan Markwell. And she's a pretty good authority when you're grieving, let me tell you. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of the other 16 global networks that I mentioned earlier, like iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, etc. All right, enough of that. Welcome to the show, Joe, the man who found his calling as a Lyft driver. So excited to have you on.
Well, thank you, Dave. Thank you, Andrea. I am excited, and I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you and your audience. And I want to congratulate you on, I said, number one. Job well done.
Yes, Adrienne and I are very proud of that, and Adrienne and I are very happy to have you on the show since we met you at the National Publicity Summit in New York, and we met a lot of great people, and you're one of them. So I like to ask my guest, why was Joe Murphy put on this earth?
Dave, Adrienne, I think I've given that question a lot of thought, especially at times that had left me wondering why. What had I done? Had I pissed God off because things were not going well? But what I found was that we are each here to make choices, to write our story, to write ourselves a new story. And I'm here specifically to experience that and share that insight for all that are receptive to writing themselves a new story.
Wow. That's a pretty good answer.
It's a good goal.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the Lyft driver thing.
Well, the Lyft driver thing, I've always been an entrepreneur. Since back when Nixon was president, and I worked in the welfare department, and that job came to a close, I went into becoming an entrepreneur, to be my own boss. And after the last company I had created failed, I had to pay the bills. We all know that feeling. I had to pay the bills to support my family. And I took a job driving with Lyft to experience that. Check it out and see how that would work out.
How'd that work out for you?
I discovered I love driving with Lyft.
Really?
It's like being paid to play because two of my favorite things are driving and meeting and talking with people. And that's the
That's
best of both.
best way.
Wow, that's awesome. So, about your book, what's the name of it again?
Living full tilt, celebrate life.
And why
And
on earth did you write that book?
because so many things happen in life that we leaves us feeling, most of us feeling like asking, why are we here? What did I do wrong? Who did
Uh-huh.
I piss off? But instead of celebrating life, I got a little funny story for you.
Okay.
When I was 9 years old, grade school was terrible because I had a terrible auto accident when I was 4 and changed my
Mm,
life.
Oh
I didn't
my.
feel like I fit in. And I read a book. My dad had this little book called Your Greatest Power. And I thought it was going to tell me how to have instant muscles because I saw those Charles Atlas cart ads in the comic book saying
comic
instant
books.
muscles.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I was going to get instant muscles and kick butt. But it said my greatest power was the power to choose. And I threw that book down in disgust because that was not what this little boy wanted to read. But I
Yeah.
learned as I thought about it afterwards, the power to choose is everything.
Hmm. So did you have a lot of Lyft drivers? I mean, you're the driver. Did you have a lot of Lyft passengers? How long did you do it for? And
I'm
what
still,
you're still
go
doing it?
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious what stories you have from your Lyft experience that kind of molded you and changed your life and gave you new perspective. Can you share some stories? You don't have to share the
I,
names or anything.
sure. One of my stories I like very well is there was a nurse that I would pick up. Uh, but she would call and request a ride occasionally, and I would, or frequently, and I would receive a request occasionally, and
Mm-hmm.
we would share and go into some meaningful conversation. And the last time I gave her a ride, she got in the car and said, "I saw you were coming, Joe, and I knew that God was listening because you listen and you give me good insight."
Wow, that was
See,
that was inspirational.
it was another inspirational, if you will, for me. I had a young man, high school junior, I gave a ride to school, and he and I got into a deep conversation. Although I don't normally talk deeply with young people, but he and I got in a deep conversation, and then 2 weeks or so went by, and I gave him another ride, and we got into another deep conversation, and then
Mm.
about 2 weeks later, on a Saturday, I got a request from the house he lived in, went
Mm.
by and picked up his mother. And she got in the car and we started talking,
Wow.
and I opened up conversation, and she said, "I think you gave my son a ride." And I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "I don't know if he told you, but the conversation was very important to him.
Mm.
Fact is, he came home after school and we had a deep, meaningful conversation that I am so grateful to have had with my son." And then she asked if she could give me a hug. I,
Wow.
I told her I appreciated that moment, that awareness, because that was what it was all about.
Yeah, it's very rare that I mean I've been in I can't even count how many Lyft and Uber cars I've been in, but it's rare. It's never happened to me where I get the same guy twice ever. And I guess it happens because sometimes I ask the drivers, "Do you ever get the same one picked up?" And they says, "Well, sometimes." But like you said, sometimes there's someone who likes you, and then they just request you, or they make advanced reservations with you. And I always share my wisdom and my life with the driver, and we always end up having a deep conversation. But it's nice to hear it from the other end. So, what other stories can you share from Lyft? Because those are God moments, in my opinion.
Yes, thank you. On the other side of the coin, what the driver can learn. the I was trying to one it was a Friday coming up to the end of the week for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to meet. I had a weekly goal, and I was behind the eight ball, and I said a little prayer. I asked. I have a little what I call my ask process, where we can ask for what we want, and I did my little ask process, and I was sitting at a light. And it was 15 minutes to closing time for me. And I had never done 4 rides in 15 minutes.
Wow.
But I needed 4 rides. So I asked, and before the light changed, I had my first request right on the corner, caddy cornered from me, a short ride, dropped them off. Before they got out of the cab, before I got in my car, I had another request. And the bottom line was, in that 15 minutes, I had completed 3 rides and had my fourth ride requested, which when I get the request is what all counts. So unbelievably, by asking for what I wanted and being grateful, I received 4 rides, hit my numbers. It was incredible.
Well, that's awesome. Um, Now you talk about love in your book, and how we can't love anyone more than we love ourselves, and that is so true. There's a Bible verse that says, "Love others the way you love yourself." Well,
Yeah.
duh. If you're not really fond of yourself or you hate yourself, how in the world are you going to love others as you love yourself? Um, and you talk about how you want to help people convert that little voice in their head. And I
Yes.
and I got a little voice in my head told me to tell my stepbrother, to come sailing with us when I was going that particular day, but I
Yes.
disobeyed the voice. I instead said, "Hey, you're gonna need to come with us, when we go again next week." And when I got home, I found out he had killed himself that day. And so I learned the hard way we must
Oh,
obey that
God.
voice. I know,
That little voice.
that little voice.
I never
That
knew
little
that,
voice.
Dave.
Oh,
Go ahead, Adrienne. I'm sorry.
I'll send you the video on the speech that I did at one of the Harvards. Yeah, it was. I dealt with a lot of self guilt and forgiveness and forgiving myself, asking God to forgive me. Because who knows, if I would have just listened to that voice, he might still be alive today. Maybe not, but you know, I think it was a lesson for all of us, and that's why I'm telling the speech. I talk about that story. I never told that story before, but I was encouraged to tell a story that I'd never told anybody. And I don't share that story very often, but I told the world that story about 6 months ago, and it's helping a lot of people.
It is helping a lot of people because that's a very important message, Dave. And
Mm.
when we share our experiences, what we ourselves have learned with those that are receptive to listen and think about it, ponder on it,
Hmm.
they can gain the insight that we paid the price for.
Yeah. Adrian, I just want to tell you, I was 18 when it happened, so I mean,
Oh,
it wasn't recently.
no, but
you
still,
know,
yeah.
my father was going through a divorce. He was divorcing my mother, and he started dating a female attorney, and her son was one of the classmates that I had gone to Catholic school like all my life, and so
Mm.
I knew him, and it was very awkward, for both of us. And so, that's kind of how it happened, and I've had a lot of time to heal over that, like 45 years, but still, it's something you don't forget.
Impactful.
Yeah.
This is a
Every,
significant moment.
Everyone has a story about how suicide has touched their life. Whether they, um, thought about killing themselves or were so depressed that it seemed like there was no way out, or maybe they actually attempted it, or maybe somebody foiled it, or maybe they just chickened out, or they know somebody. I mean, not too long ago, Anthony Bourdain, and I used to envy this guy. I used to watch him
Hmm.
on CNN all the time, on the
Great. It
weekends. And
seemed like a great life.
yeah, the guy's got amazing hair that I wish I had. He can travel all over the world. He can eat anything he
Anything.
wants. And I mean, how does a guy like that be so depressed about his life that he takes it? I just don't understand. But I guess that's how depression is.
Can't see it from the outside, generally speaking.
Yeah.
What was it? The Beatles, I believe, had a song about the small town wealthy person that had everything from the outside, and then he blew his brains out at the light because he had nothing
Mm,
that he wanted on the inside.
yeah. So have you ever dealt with depression and, becoming suicidal, Joe, since we're all just talking amongst ourselves here?
The Yes, I have, Dave. I have had depression, deep depression, and really was ready to take that moment, take
Mm,
that step, and to escape because I couldn't understand what had happened, why it had happened, and it appeared I had led my family onto the street,
Mm.
and
yeah.
I didn't know how to deal with that.
A lot of people just want to stop the pain, and that's the only way they know how to stop the pain. Have you shared that story with anyone?
No,
Wow, this
not to
is
that, not in that depth. No, I've shared the
yeah.
story of being in pain
Uh-huh.
and thinking of being terrified. I'd led my family onto the street,
I think
but
that's
I
going to be
have
your second
not shared.
book, Joe. Not going to be an easy one to write.
Oh, Dave, Adrian, when we have our moments of triumph or moments of success,
Uh-huh.
that builds our confidence.
Yeah.
That builds our self-esteem. But it is when we are struggling. It's when we are deep in the engine room trying to get it going. That's when we learn.
Yeah. And like you said, that inner voice, not only does it tell us to do things that we should do, it's like our little conscience, but after a while it will help us to love ourselves more because there are other voices in our head besides that one that says you're an idiot, you're a fool, no one's going to like you, and many times they're the voice of someone in our childhood, like our father says you're never going to amount to anything, stuff like that, and that just plays. And, the old saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm you. Yeah,
If they
well,
do.
sticks and stones, at least your bones will heal. And the abrasions and the contusions, they will heal. But those words, man, it's tough to get rid of those.
Well,
You
let
know,
me
they
share.
say forgive and forget, but you might be able to forgive in time, but it's very hard to forget. That voice is
Yeah.
always in your head.
And the
Well,
hard part
I'm
is,
gonna.
unless you forget, you really haven't forgiven. You're just in the process of forgiving.
I'm also going to share. I have a different perspective that I present in my book about that, and I say that we are confused because we take things personal that are not personal. Personal
Yeah.
means ownership. When
Right.
somebody else says something, the words that hurt us, we have a choice. We've fallen in the trap of letting those words hurt us. I have a story I'll share if I may. My
Yeah.
wife and I were at a Jack Canfield seminar in Dallas maybe 15 years ago.
Mm.
So it's been quite a while. It was a
Chicken soup for the
huge,
soul.
yes, it was a huge auditorium. Midday, Jack is walking in the crowd and talking to us as he walks. And then he stops about 4 rows behind me and my wife. About 4 rows back, he stops and turns this young woman sitting on the corner on the edge, last seat, and he asks, "Are you learning anything?
Hmm.
Is this a good experience?" And she's all bubbly and happy and this is just coming out with these great words of how happy she is. And then, without warning, he tore into her, chewed her up one side, down the other, spit her out, ground his heel on. I mean, it was terrible. And he said, "What are you thinking now?" And she's crying. She was unable to talk.
Wow.
And he said, "There's only one thing for you to be thinking. What's his problem? You don't absorb the emotion of my words because they're not personal to you. They're only personal to the person who said them."
Yeah. Yeah, you need thick skin to live in this world. You can't take
Well,
anything personal because a lot of times people, they're not thinking right. They're hurting just like you. They've been damaged just like you. They're trying to survive just like you. They may have tried to kill themselves just like you.
mhm.
And hurting people hurt people, unfortunately.
And oftentimes they don't even mean to. And then forget it. And then another perspective is they can just be hungry or grouchy or
Yeah.
sleepy. And those three mindsets, hungry, sleepy, or grouchy, often go together, but they filter how we respond to things.
Hmm. Wow.
So when we accept words and emotions that didn't come from us, we are inviting that person to, we're giving our power over to them.
Let
Does
me
that make
ask you
Yeah.
sense?
something, Joe. Um, I certainly understand the concept of choice, but I didn't necessarily have that when I was a child and getting all of the negative input that I was getting. Um, how do you suggest children deal with things, or do you just talk to the parents and tell them how dangerous what they're doing is?
I talk to parents mostly or to adults. I talk I talk with some some teenagers from time to time. When I'm talking with a young child, young being in single
Mm-hmm.
digits, I just look in the eye and tell them they are so loved. They are so important. They just don't understand. And the problem is we've all have gone through the same cycle. No, but as you said earlier, Dave, our parents did this, but what they did was done. They were repeating what was done to them. We
Mm.
have
Right.
been passing down this chain, unbroken chain of pain and anger and lashing out that and generation after generation, and we don't understand that we are so loved. We, each of us, are so important. I had a one of my passengers one time say, "Joe, I understand. I really do. I get the love. I understand why love is so important. I gotta love myself, but I don't understand why I have to forgive.
Mhm.
Why? Why is forgiveness right there with love?"
Well, hold that
And
thought, Joe. We're going to talk
okay.
about forgiveness when we get back. We got to take a short break. So we'll be right back with Joe Murphy and Adrienne Gruberg and myself, Dave Nassaney. We'll be right back.
We are a community of caregivers that understands and supports you wherever you are in your journey. We are a place to connect with other caregivers, but more importantly, a place to get practical, actionable help. There are lots of ways for you to get support. First of all, you can download our welcome pack. This will get you started on your Thrive journey. Next, you can ask and get answers to your questions by posting them here in our private Facebook groups. You can also get live online support by attending one of our live weekly Connect webinars. You can get practical, actionable advice by listening to our weekly podcast. You can hear and read other stories about other caregivers' experiences. Plus, add your own in our weekly Share Your Story forum, posted every Tuesday in the Facebook group. you can access essential resources and download practical Thrive Solutions Packs, all of which are geared to help you thrive as a caregiver. You get lifetime access to all of our resources. Again, we're here to support you and help you thrive and to enjoy your life as a caregiver. And remember, this is a place to get hope, not just cope.
And we're back with Adrienne Gruberg and our guest, Joe Murphy. And I'm Dave Nassaney. And we're talking about, right now, unforgiveness. And, Joe, I always say that drinking poison is like not forgiving someone and hoping the other person dies, because it doesn't ever hurt us. I'm sorry, it doesn't ever hurt them. They're busy having a great old time, and they have no clue what they did to you, or if they did, they don't care. And you're the one that's devastated. And, you're throwing these daggers and these arrows at them, and they're not feeling it. But they're like boomerangs. They're coming back and they're hurting you.
Totally right. I mean, there is I used to read the Sunday comics in the paper, and there was a comic strip, I think it's still going, but this was about 20 years ago, and it's called Rose is Rose. And they had about a week strip about the Rose, the wife, was angry with her husband and not forgiving him, and so each day was about her pouting, and he thought he was mystified. What had he done? He didn't understand. It was, and it ended on a Sunday when she said, "I'm letting you out of the dungeon because I've learned that for me to be keeping you in the dungeon, I'm the dungeon keeper. I got to be guarding the gate. I got to be right here with you."
Yeah, and sometimes, we don't even remember what caused the feud, the Hatfields and the McCoys. Nobody
Right.
remembers what started that thing, But all they remember, and kids growing up from a small age, is that, we don't like Uncle Joe and Aunt Sally because whatever, But yeah, you just gotta. I was always told when I went to church that God takes our sins and He buries them into the sea of forgetfulness, and He puts a sign up that says "No fishing."
No fishing. There's a country song, maybe a dozen years ago. I forget who did it, but anyway, it's the husband is singing. Me and my wife, we had a fight, and we buried the hatchet. We left the handle sticking out, and we pull that hatchet back out ever so often. Then we bury it again, but we pull it back out.
Yeah. It reminds me of a joke. This guy was visiting Jerusalem, on vacation, and while he was there, his wife suddenly died, and so he went, to the coroner and the funeral director, and he says, "Now, sir, I got to tell you that if you have her buried here in Jerusalem, it'll be a lot cheaper than sending the body back to America. In fact, it'll be like $3,000 cheaper. Now, what would you like to do?" And he thinks for a minute, and he says, "No, I think we better bury her here." He says, "Oh, okay, if that's what you want, but I'm just curious. Why would you want to do that?" He says, "Well, I don't know. A couple of thousand years ago, I heard that there was a guy who you buried in Jerusalem, and he rose from the dead, and I can't take those kind of chances."
Taking no chances.
No chances. Okay, sorry about that. So you talk about 3 steps: develop unconditional love for ourselves, find our purpose, and choose our path. Why don't you comment on that?
On the 3 steps.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're your 3 steps, right?
Right, the 3 steps.
Okay.
So step 1, most important, priority number 1, I believe the reason we are here is to learn to love everything. But we can't share what we don't have. If your neighbor came to you and said, "Hey, Dave, I'm baking a cake, but I just noticed I'm 2 eggs short. Can I get 2 eggs from you?" And you say, "Yeah, I'm happy to give you 2 eggs." But you go to the refrigerator, somebody already ate your last egg. Can you give your neighbor 2 eggs?
No, sir.
We can't share what we don't have. So we need to learn to love ourselves just the way we are, unconditionally, through everything. The way that we may envision God loves us, or we want God to love us this way, love
Yeah.
ourselves that way.
That's easier said than done. Before you move on to the second one, how does somebody love themselves if they really are having trouble doing that? Is there a 1, 2, 3 step to how to love yourself?
There is about a 5-step process on how to love yourself. And I go into this in my book, and the first step is to, at the beginning of the day, twice a day, I did it at the beginning of the day and end of the day, go to the mirror, and I use the bathroom mirror, go to the bathroom mirror, and look myself in the eye, and tell myself, I am loved. I am loved, no matter what. Like a newborn is loved by when they come home from the hospital. No matter what they do, they are loved. I am loved that way. I am proud. I am proud of myself and I think of something I have done, something good that went right. Maybe it's just that I'm going through the practice. I'm reminding myself I am loved, because this is very, very difficult chain link to break, but it's worth the effort. Another step is then to tell myself, remind myself, looking myself in the eye, of what I am wanting to do, what I see myself wanting to do. Then there's some other steps, but that's all in the book, and those are the most important steps. Those 3 steps by themselves, if you do that for 60 days, you'll have a different perspective.
Guaranteed, huh?
Guaranteed.
Awesome. So, you talked about find our purpose. How do we find our purpose?
We find our purpose by as we learn to love ourselves. And that's the key, and that's step 1. That's got to be in process. Maybe not there yet, but we're getting there. And then, what is it I want to do? What is in my heart that brings me joy and makes me wake up every morning thinking, I am so fortunate. I am fortunate. I am so grateful for being me. And
So,
we find out what that is. And then begin practicing it, thinking about it, feeling the joy.
yeah, because everybody has different gifts. Some people are
Of
musically
course.
talented. Some people are great counselors. Some people, can solve Einstein's, riddles of the universe.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, we were born with these gifts. And so many people, I mean, you talk about the pain of regret. So many people go through their lives without, number 1, knowing they even have these gifts. Number 2, developing them. And number 3, implementing them. And what a wasted life that is, So we need to discover what those gifts are. Then we need to develop them, because, maybe they just come naturally, like a child prodigy who plays the violin at 4 years old and doesn't need any lessons, but that's rare. Develop those gifts. Seek out the people who are the best in your gifting, and let them teach you some tricks and tips to make them even better.
Well, well said. I like to use what I think I call my puzzle analogy. You put a puzzle together before, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Basically, everybody has. The Many of the pieces of that puzzle look similar. Similar shape, similar
Yeah.
color,
Mm-hmm.
but each one only goes one place.
Yeah.
And if you finish that puzzle and you've lost a piece is missing, is that puzzle complete?
Well, it looks strange.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I say God is putting the puzzle together of the universe.
Mm.
And you and I, each one of us,
Play
everyone
a
and
part.
everything is a piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
There is no replacement for us, but we all work together. And that's the macro picture, and on the micro picture, we ourselves, as we go through life and have their experiences and our insights and experience and grow and stumble and
Mm,
fall, we're given our piece color and
yeah.
texture and depth.
And I believe God wants us to work together with those. Nobody's alike. Everyone's different. Even I'll talk politics for a minute here. The conservatives might be good at balancing a budget, when they actually do it. And, the liberals might be good at saving the planet and giving us clean water and clean air. And they hate each other. And it's like you can't survive without either one of them. Can you
Right?
imagine what a great country this would be again if we just worked together and put aside our petty little political differences? It's a
Dave,
shame.
we have a caller.
We do.
Yeah.
Where
Hi
are
guys,
they?
very hairy around my penis and
Oh,
my balls. Chronic masturbator. Love to jerk off. I take my own cum. Love to kiss,
Oh,
suck, fuck, jerk off, eat ass, sleep to
wonderful.
dime.
really?
Is that a
Yeah,
prank call?
that's a
Robot call?
prank. Hang up on him.
Yes. That's they got their own problems, don't we all? The
Yeah.
the I would, but did you finish, Dave?
Yeah, I do.
The
You can talk about the third thing, which is choose our
choosing
path,
your path.
our track.
Yeah. The we have choosing our path. The seasons. Mother Nature has summer and winter opposites,
Uh-huh.
but they balance each other. Okay. We in our life, we come. My book, I present the ideal that we come in this world of the sensory world, sensory
Yeah.
based, see, touch, feel, taste, hear.
Hi, Daniel. This is John, 45-year-old white male, black hair, blue eyes. And it's Scott Cox.
There, I muted him. Glad.
Yeah. We hear that, and we experience things that don't go. We have anomalies happen living in the sensory world. Things that don't really jive. This happened. How'd that happen?
Yeah.
And as we grow, we begin to peel the onion, if you will, to look underneath the surface, and we move into the metaphysical world, beyond the physical. And there we learn to that there's as Albert Einstein said, one of the he said that the imagination is more
Oh,
important
yeah.
than knowledge.
And we're the only animal that has an imagination. The dogs and the cats and the lions and the elephants. They're just kind of on autopilot. Their instincts tell them what to do and how to swim, how to survive, how to eat. So tell me, let's solve the biggest problem in the world theologically, and that is why do bad things happen to good people? Everybody wants to know that.
Bad things happen to good people. Like Einstein said, we can't resolve a problem from the same perspective that we discover it, find it. Bad things happen to good people is a story, is we're living the stories that we tell ourselves, we're experiencing the stories that we tell ourselves, and we have these things happen that anomalies that don't seem to jive with what should be. And it's all for the point of awakening our senses to understand that what we experience is a story. And
Uh-huh.
we can tell ourselves we can live a new story, but first we have to awaken.
Yeah. Wow. Anything to say, Adrienne?
Oh, I'm just thinking what bad things have happened to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually glad that caller came on and did what he did because I realize I have a control here that says mute new people on entry. So there we go.
Aha!
That should be like, without having to turn it on, they should have it so that it automatically is silent, and then you have to turn them on if they want to talk. So yeah, in the years we've been doing this, that's never ever been happening. Ever
Mm-mm.
happened. But I guarantee it'll never happen again.
Twice.
Because
I think it was the
One
same. It was the same guy.
learning
Yeah, it
curve.
was a different phone number, same guy.
Yeah. Some people just have too much time on their hands. Yeah, I feel that way whenever someone comes into the restroom at my gas station. It's a very busy restroom, and they tag it all up. I just want to
Oh,
castrate them, cut off their fingers, to teach them, no, you don't graffiti. Because in some Middle Eastern countries, that's what they do. If you steal something, they cut off your right hand. And if you rape somebody, they cut off that thing. And it does
it's,
seem to work for some strange reason.
there's when there is a clear distinction, when there's a clear connection to this type of behavior has this kind of response, a price to pay for this. It's effective,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
So we live the story that we tell ourselves, and how to write a new story. How do we write a new story if our old story is all messed up? We were molested as a child. We were, we're just messed up. We were beaten, and that
We
story
have
in our head just
tremendous
plays
pain.
over and over again, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. We have everyone has different levels of pain and different events that happen in their life that we don't understand. But when we look at life from a perspective that I've lived the story I'm telling myself, I'm living the story that I wrote at one point in time. I'm experiencing that, and I have the power to choose because the choice is within my power. When I make that choice and awaken to that, and I begin to write a new story, the story that I want, then things change along those lines. What also happens is that when we a way to help boost that is that back up and say that when we wrote these stories that we have, we were often young, started when we were very young, and we connected events that were not connected, but we connected them in ways that made sense to us, and we
Yep.
built this around that this is how the world works. But actually, all that it is how our world works right then until we tell ourselves until we write a new story. To give you an example, when I was a senior in high school, I had met a girl somehow from the other side of town, and I went to a birthday party with her to people that she went to school with. And as we walked onto that porch, and I started to reach for the doorbell, a sudden insight came to me that nobody here, nobody here knew me. Nobody here, because I was not. I had been living in a shell from the pain of my childhood accident. I didn't fit in. I felt like I was an outcast.
Mm.
But on that porch, I thought nobody here knows me.
Yeah,
I can be me,
that's right.
and I went in and I had a wonderful time.
Yeah, that's how it was for me in 11th grade. Everybody knew me. I was kind of a geek because they knew me from grade school, and they just kind of followed you up to 11th grade. And in 12th grade, my cousin came out from New York, and we decided we're going to go to a new school. And so we went and you know what? I was Mr. Popular because nobody knew my past. Nobody knew the bullies that had been persecuting me, over the
Yes,
years. And him and I were picking up girls left and right because we were like, you know, Starsky and Hutch. So it's so true. Listen, we're going to take a break on that note, and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Dave Nassaney, the Caregiver's Caregiver, has just released his 6th book entitled It's My Life Too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. It was specifically written for caregivers who know they should be putting their needs first, but just don't know how. Dave is the sole caregiver to his wife, Charlene, since 1996. He knows firsthand what caregivers are going through, because he is one. And he now speaks all across the country, offering caregivers his incredible caregiver support package.
Even the airlines tell us that in the event of an emergency, to put your oxygen mask on first before you help your child with their mask. They know that those who don't heed their advice often black out, thus becoming unable to help either themselves or their child. And caregivers are exactly the same way. It's my life too. Reclaim your caregiver sanity by learning when to say yes and when to say no. Will help caregivers who are neglecting their sleep, diet, and social life, and learn to put their needs first. Pick up your copy today or buy one for your special caregiver. On sale everywhere and at caregiverscaregiver.com. And we're back with our guests, Joe Murphy and Adrienne Gruberg, and I'm Dave Nassaney. And we are talking about Joe's book, Living Full Tilt, and all of the things that we are discussing that's inside of his book. I wanted to ask you, unconditional acceptance and love for ourselves. You write, we position ourselves in the constant flow of God's love coming to us by learning to look deeper within and developing an unconditional acceptance. And you make it sound so easy, but unconditional acceptance, that almost sounds like unconditional love, and that I don't think any human is capable of loving someone unconditionally. There's always strings attached. There's always, well, I love you, but gosh, if you could just lose a few pounds, life would be perfect. Or, if you just let me go out on weekends with my friends, that'd be good, or whatever. What do you have to say about that?
You're totally right. But the key is to choose what you focus on. The outcome. When we base everything on the outcome, and that's what we do across this world. We're outcome based, and I'm going to be happy when. This would be great when I do this, great. Focus on the moment, being here now. We can't control the outcome. The outcome is in the hands of the man upstairs. But we can control whether we commit or don't commit. I don't know if you may have seen some of the Star Wars movies. The Star Wars movies.
Oh yeah, all of them.
So there were in the very second one. Luke Skywalker had gone to learn the way of the Jedi from Yoda, right. And Yoda was teaching him, and he said, "Lift your jet." And we saw Luke.
Well, I thought you were going to do an impersonation of Yoda.
Oh no impersonation. But I have an insight for you here, and that is, we saw Luke lifting the jet up, but his little companion R2-D2 got all excited and made noises, and Luke didn't have the confidence and went back down. And Yoda said, "Do this," and he said, "I can't. It's impossible." I think and Luke said, "I'll try." It became a big saying in this country. Try means attempt. There's no commitment in that. Right. If we commit, we can commit or not commit. And Luke could have said, "I'm getting there." So one of the keys is to say, "I'm getting there. I'm practicing." See, what you're doing is practicing. And after you practice, say to yourself, "I'm getting there. I'm getting there." And if you practice and keep practicing and telling yourself, "I'm getting there," and feeling the joy of that, you will get there.
Good point.
It's worked for me. It's worked for countless others. Let go of the outcome. The outcome is not in our hands, but we can practice. We can practice. So to answer your question, we practice understanding that we don't make it. I don't know. I doubt we can make it in this world.
Well, we have the power to choose our perspective. I mean, the glass is either half empty or half full. And you can either be optimistic about life or pessimistic about life. If you're worried that a car is going to hit you when you cross the street one day and you're not going to live out your life, well, that might become a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's the laws of a magnetic attraction, So many people have written about things like that. It's like, the world will say, I'll believe it when I see it. But, inside here, the way we were built, it's I will see it. No, I will believe it.
I will believe it when I see it.
No, that's what they say, but we say,
Yeah.
I will see it when I believe it. Right. So it has to
Yes.
happen up here
Yes.
first. They were all confused. It has to happen up here first, And you look at every single successful person in the world, regardless of who they are, or Mother Teresa. I bet you that she always was passionate about helping the underdog and helping people who were in need. That didn't just happen overnight, I don't think. She believed that she saw the poverty around the world, and people would tell her, well, you can't save the whole world. But she figured out, I think I can if I try one country at a time. And so she went to Calcutta, India, and everyone talks about her. And she made a difference in that country and that city where most of the population just lived on the gutter. So, yeah, got to believe it before you see it.
Garth Brooks had a song. I think it was Circle of Fire, but he said, the world says you can't save the world. I'll get told, people say you can't save the world. And I reach out to help, and they say you can't save the world. And I say, I'm not trying to save the world. I'm telling the world it won't change me. So, and as we go from person to person, Mother Teresa going from person to person, helping one person at a time, not letting the world change her.
Yeah, who knows that one of the people that she helped to save her life or his life is the next guy who finds his way to college and develops the next cure for cancer. I mean, you just don't know. And so I think we're coming up on our time is up moment. And so if there's one last thing you want to share with our audience that you haven't already, what do you want them to go home with?
I want them to go home with, live as if everything is rigged in your favor.
Oh, I like
because
that.
it is.
I like that. If you believe it, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Margaret Mead was very fortunate. She was fortunate beyond belief. And once a friend of hers said, "Well, Margaret, why are you so fortunate? How does that happen?" And she said, "Because I expect it to be. I expect to be." We write our own stories. When you went
Right.
to high school the 12th year, everything changed. You wrote yourself a new story without being aware of it.
Yeah. Well, how do we get a hold of you if we want to buy your book or talk to you or pick your brain?
Well, I welcome that. My website is livingfulltilt.com. There is a comment box on my website to send me a question. Got a comment? Got a question? I'm ready to get connected. There's a link on my website to buy my book, and livingfulltilt.com.
I almost know what living full tilt means. It's an expression that I think I've heard before. Can you explain it?
Living full tilt is choosing to go all out.
All
Living
out.
as if everything is rigged in your favor.
And where does the tilt come from? I think of, vending machines, when you would bang on it, it says tilt, tilt.
Well, it came originally from medieval Europe when the knights would joust. And if a knight was putting everything into it, putting their soul and heart into their joust, they would hold their lance up high, tilted full up, straight ahead,
Uh,
and that came to be called full tilt. And I
hmm,
say live full tilt.
just
And
ready.
a passenger told me that in poker, when a poker player is playing everything out, they call that full tilt.
Full tilt.
Hmm. Let it ride. Well, that's great. So, Adrienne, how do we get a hold of you?
It's Adrienne at thecaregiverspace.org, and the website's thecaregiverspace.org, and the Facebook page is just the Caregiver Space.
Great, and I'm Dave Nassaney, and I'm at caregiverdave.com, and a reminder that all these shows, including this one, is on our website, is on YouTube, is on all of the platforms I mentioned before, audio and video, and we have 3 free gifts for you at caregiverdave.com. Just check it out, no obligation, then consider joining. There's tremendous value there to help you stay alive and burnout free, because 30% of you, we just know, are going to die because you're going to burn out, and no one's going to be around to take care of your loved one. You're going to die before your loved one, and that's depressing. And a lot more of you are going to become sicker, hospitalized, and eventually need a caregiver of your own. And so you're both going to need a caregiver, and there aren't enough caregivers to go around, buddy. Let me tell you that. Not enough facilities. I mean, we're in trouble. I call it the caregiver tsunami. If you think Social Security and Medicare is in trouble because more people are taken out than putting in, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Nope.
Everyone's going to either become a caregiver and need a caregiver, or they already are a caregiver. And so now's the time to learn how to become a caregiver, not after tragedy strikes and you don't have time to scratch your head. So Joe and Adrienne, all my listeners out there, thank you again for tuning in. So until next time, goodbye, and may God richly bless you all.
Thank you, Dave and Adrienne. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for listening to the Caregivers Caregiver radio program with Dave Nassaney.